Good morning and welcome back to the Broadcast Retirement Network. I'm Jeff Snyder and this is BRN AM for Tuesday, December 8th, 2020. And our top stories today, Salesforce buys Slack for $27 billion and an exodus out of Silicon Valley. Well, joining me now to discuss this and a lot more is Daniel Klein. He's lead advisor and executive producer for 7 Investing. Dan, thanks so much for joining us on the program this morning.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So let's jump in. We got a lot of big tech news we're going to talk about today. Let's start with Slack and Salesforce. What's going on here? What do we need to know?
So this is a big deal. Salesforce is acquiring Slack. This takes a major player off the board. Slack was a pretty fast-growing company during the pandemic, maybe not as fast as it should have been. And this is a company that had a lot of directions it could go in. You know it as a workplace tool. I know it as something I use at work, but something I also use socially. I have a personal Slack where just some of my friends are in it and we chat all the time. You know, they're moving to integrations where like within your workplace, you might have like a horror movie, channel or things like that. Being bought by Workforce, I don't want to say it slams the brakes on some of that, but if they're going to integrate with Salesforce, that's a tool that helps you manage relationships. So you're going to see much more business functionality. I know my wife in the nonprofit world, she uses Salesforce for things like, okay, how many times have we spoken to this person? Have they done our survey? Have they been trained? Have they been to an event? It keeps all of that record keeping, and being able to integrate communications into that, that's a big step. That's not going to happen quickly. It's probably going to be about 6 months till the deal closes, and then it's going to take a while to see changes. But this basically is Salesforce saying, hey, Microsoft, we're coming after you, as opposed to some of the other directions I thought maybe Slack and Zoom would merge, and though you'd get video and text working together. So this is a different direction, but Salesforce does have a really good history of acquisitions and doing well with them.
So Dan, you talked about the communication aspect, and I guess the door is still open for a Zoom or Zoom-like competitor to be a part of this new consolidation. But let's talk about, you mentioned Microsoft. I have to think that they are probably the biggest competitor from a workforce, workflow perspective. They have obviously the Office suite. They have Microsoft Teams. They have Skype, which seems to be going away and not as supported, unfortunately. Is that their biggest competitor? Is this new consolidation the biggest competitor for Microsoft?
So one of the biggest things Slack had going for it is that it wasn't Microsoft. Besides the fact that it works really well, it is a much better product than Teams. And Teams is a successor to Lync, and I loved Lync back when I worked at Microsoft, but Slack was so much better. The quality of it, some of the features, it just worked a lot better, but it was just not Microsoft. I'm not so sure if some of the people that were drawn to this independent company are going to be that excited that now it's part of Salesforce. That might not be a drawing card to not go with Microsoft. Most companies, that aren't using, say, the Google suite like we're using at 7 Investing, they're already paying for some sort of Microsoft package for Office 365, for Teams, for who knows what. So it is easier to say, well, you're already on our email, you're already using Word, you already use PowerPoint, why don't you just use Teams? That said, I think there's room for more than one winner here. And I think that that's true with Zoom as well. It does get a little bit harder for Zoom in that, okay, now Slack, which does have video functionality, well, if they improve that, you might say, okay, I'm using Slack for my one-on-one calls because we're already typing. Our typing is escalated to be worth talking, and we just do it in that platform instead of the way a lot of companies do it. Oh, hey, let's move to video. Here's a Zoom meeting. So I do think they're the ones that face the most pressure. Microsoft is just kind of a monolith. They move along. They can be good enough products. Like Office is, I think, the premier product, but none of their other products. Outlook's not great email, but neither is Gmail. So it's one of those things where this is Salesforce saying we have broader intentions than just being a sales platform, and it's going to be really interesting to see how they change and grow that.
And Dan, with this merger, do you lose some of your agility? I mean, Salesforce grew from nothing. Slack, as you said, grew from nothing. Spending time and effort on merger, bringing tools together, evaluating staff, right? Because that's all part of an M&A opportunity. Does this take away some of that agility that many of us really value with technology partners, things that we use, that we like the agility, we like that they can roll out a new patch or a new software enhancement relatively quickly. They can do the testing. What about that?
I'm going to say probably no, based on the history of how Salesforce has handled some pretty big acquisitions, Tableau being one. This isn't Microsoft, which took over Skype and then just didn't know what to do with it, got rid of a lot of people, management changed. They haven't made any comments about how the company is going to be run, but I would expect that Slack stays somewhat independent, sort of like the way LinkedIn has at Microsoft, where of course there's going to be teams from both sides working on integration. There might be things like accounting where there's some consolidation. I doubt there's going to be significant consolidation on the programming side, on the development side. So I think you're going to see, yeah, absolutely. There's going to be a lot of discussions on how do we make this work and integrate really well with Salesforce. But Slack already integrates with hundreds of different things, different apps. Like I know, like my Google Calendar and Slack speak really well together. Google Docs, you can share it and ask you like, well, this person doesn't have permission. I think that kind of stuff is actually going to happen faster because they'll be the same company. There won't be those barriers and discussions and negotiations. I'd be really surprised if you see a major departure of top personnel from Slack. I mean, who knows what happens with the CEO? Who knows if he remains like in charge of the company? But I would think for the most part, why you're buying them is the people and the audience. And I still think they're going to develop that. I do think they're not going to focus on the parts of it that I'm interested in, was their ability to grow as a social platform. I really thought Slack could be sort of an answer to Facebook, and that doesn't seem like it's going to be a priority here.
Last question, Dan, for this segment. I mean, we have talked throughout this pandemic of the shift from work from home is just really well timed for what is now a paradigm shift for all of us, many of us, not all of us, but many of us, in terms of working remotely, integrating. We're doing a lot more things online. You and I are today talking through video chat like Skype and Zoom, et cetera. Is this really well timed for that?
Yes and no. So Slack, because the nature of Slack is short communications, or, hey, Jeff, you want to take a look at this chart? Like, and you send the attachment and it's faster than email. Mm-hmm. That happens when we're in an office. When I used to go visit Motley Fool headquarters, I might literally be in a Slack discussion with someone whose chair was touching my chair, because it was easier to have that quick interaction than to turn around and talk. And when you talk, you have to have a certain amount of politeness and pleasantry. You don't know what the other person is doing. So if you speak, you're interrupting them. Whereas if you Slack them, they can get to that when they choose to get to that. So I think there's an immediacy to it that, look, Slack has replaced a ton of email. And within an office, are you really going to walk down the hall to be like, hey, Dan, we're ordering sushi. What do you want for lunch? Or are you just going to like throw a group message and say, everybody put their order in the message? There's so much convenience that comes out of Slack. Now, is it perfect? No. There are 7 people in the main body of chat for my team, 7 people. And I spend time every day going, oh, I know someone shared the link to that somewhere. Which channel is it in? So it's not a perfect medium, but it's gotten better. It's getting there. There are things like, at first, Slack didn't let you invite people outside your organization into your channel. So if they didn't have the right email, well, now you can say, okay, Jeff, we're going to invite you in, but you're only going to be allowed in the vendor channel and the horror movie club, because we let outsiders in our social stuff. Like I'm being a little silly, but that's really valuable functionality, because like on our team, we have our core like stock picking group are in all the channels, but our marketing team is only in one channel. So we can access them but they can't see what we're thinking, because we kind of don't want the church and state to mix in terms of some of those things. So the functionality is getting better. And I don't think that's going to really change when we go back to the office to some extent. We're not fully going back to the office ever, I think.
Well, Dan, I want to take a very quick break. When we come back, we're going to talk about the mild exodus out of Silicon Valley. We'll talk about HP and a lot more. You're going to want to stay tuned right here on BRN AM. Imagine a new television network that will make you richer, healthier, and in control of your financial future. This network is for the policewoman in Nashville, Tennessee, the baker in Dubuque, Iowa, the teacher in Lexington, Kentucky. We want to make the idea of savings and retirement culturally relevant. But what do you see as a defining issue of the midterms? Especially for the smaller businesses. I mean, they are the lifeblood of the American economy. Featuring exclusive interviews, current affairs, and docuseries. 33 years old, you retired early.
The philosophy is money only matters if it helps you live a life that you love.
But you got to start thinking about retirement as soon as you get in.
The Broadcast Retirement Network will drive very high engagement with premium partnerships. So this isn't retirement and savings for your parents or grandparents. This is for all Americans. And we're going to change the way you think about money. Welcome to the next frontier of retirement and savings. This is BRN, the Broadcast Retirement Network.
Hi folks, Joe Namath here, and if you're on Medicare, this is important. You're now entitled to eliminate copays and get dental care, dentures, eyeglasses, prescription coverage, in-home aids, unlimited transportation, and home-delivered meals, all at no additional cost. Plus, your zip code may have coverage with the Give Back benefit that adds money back to your Social Security check every month. Look, with the uncertainty of the virus and vaccines, you need to get everything you're entitled to. Here's the bottom line. Call to get significant benefits at no additional cost and see if your zip code has coverage with the Give Back benefit. Millions of people have trusted the Medicare Coverage Helpline. You can too. Call now. It's free.
Call 1-800-924-3920. That's 1-800-924-3920.
Welcome back. We're talking to Daniel Klein of 7 Investing. Dan, thanks so much for sticking around with us this morning.
I have nowhere else to be.
Oh, you literally can't go. We can't go anywhere. So I guess that's a true statement. But you have other chat meetings and your own live show, which I think you do at least 3 days a week. Dan, let's talk about this exodus. I kind of framed it as a mild exodus, but there are big companies leaving Silicon Valley, and I wanted to get to the heart of this. I mean, HP is now moving to Texas. Let's dig into this a little bit more. What does it mean, and is it a result of the pandemic?
So what HP is doing is a little bit extreme as they're fully moving their headquarters. What a lot of companies are doing is opening up alternate locations. So, you saw this with Amazon where they didn't quite open up HQ2 because of, some pushback on the area they picked in Virginia with tax breaks, but they're opening up offices in a lot of places, allowing people to work. And think about it. How hard is it to recruit someone to work in one of the more expensive places to live in the country? Hey, we're going to pay you $140 a year and you're going to struggle to pay your rent? That's tough. Or, hey, we're opening in Texas and you can choose. You can live in the city and it's going to be a little more expensive, but still way cheaper than Silicon Valley. Or you want to live 10 miles away in an idyllic suburb where a new house is $140,000. That's possible as well. So companies are looking at and a city like Houston has a ready trained workforce. So there's a lot of advantage. We're seeing a lot of growth here in West Palm Beach. They're seeing a lot of growth in Miami. There are problems on that because so many people are living here temporarily. There's not a lot of places for people to live. But yeah, I think we're going to see more companies go, where can I be that it's not going to be difficult to recruit people, but I can also offer them a quality of life that maybe you can't get in San Francisco. Look, when I lived in New York, I made good money and I never had any money because you had to pay your rent. I had to pay my train ticket, which was $300 or $400. It was $100 to park at the train station. There was every manner of sort of tax on your life when you live in one of those cities. And more companies are going to do this. The pandemic sped that up because I think you saw a lot of people say, oh, I don't have to go to the office for the next year. I'm going to move to, wherever. My brother moved from New York to Miami until he has to go back to the office. I think you're going to see more and more of that. And companies say ooh, we're going to lose people if we're not more flexible. And look, there will be more remote work. I joked about never going to the office. A small percentage of people are going to stay full remote. I think most people are going to be like a hybrid where they're in the office some days, they're not in the office. They might have a week where they work from their country retreat and then they fly back in. I think you might even see some companies in expensive places like San Francisco actually build kind of dorms which is something Microsoft does in India for some of its team, where you just live there during the week and there's communal dinners. I think you might see a more global approach to it, where the city is not necessarily where you live. I also think you might see the airlines adjust to that, where there's more commuter priced flights, where you're just getting up early Monday morning, you're flying from, wherever it is, to New York, to Washington, to Cincinnati, it doesn't matter, and then Friday at 6 o'clock, you're flying back home. I think we don't know what the shift is going to be, but there's going to be a pretty decent shift. And honestly, it's a good thing. You want to sort of take a little bit of the population. Is anyone in New York going to be upset that there are 20,000 less people living there and there's a little bit more room in the subway? We've all seen the subway car come by where the doors open and there's zero possibility you could get in. I think it would be okay if that left room for a couple of people to squeeze themselves in.
And Dan, based on what we talked about in our first segment, people using these tools, I mean, there are ways to bridge the gap. So you don't have to, we talked with your former colleague, Deidre Woolard, last week about commercial real estate and, the offices being, footprints being minimized or spreading them around. You indicated that as well. But there are these tools now, if people are working remotely, say they don't have to come in, but they can use Slack and Salesforce and Microsoft Teams and other things to stay connected. And I think this is a much more, you mentioned the diversity. I like that diversity of thought, ideas, geographic diversity, regional diversity, even people diversity, ethnicity diversity in terms of ideas. But these tools really provide an opportunity to provide connectivity. Now, you have to use them, Dan, and they have to work well, or if people get frustrated and say, I'm done with this. But, there's real potential here.
Yeah, you also have to manage the, let's call it social interaction part of it. Like my team, we do a couple of happy hours a week. And because we like each other, it's not like a fake forced thing like it is at a lot of companies. But I do think, I used the word hybrid before. I think even fully remote companies are going to do things like twice a year company retreats where they bring everybody to a location or into HQ. That was something, Motley Fool once a year had Foolapalooza where all of the full-time employees from the entire world were brought in. Obviously, that didn't happen this year. That was all done virtually. My team is very eager to be vaccinated. Most of my team has young kids, so everyone's being, really careful. I don't. I was a 16-year-old, still being careful. But that being said, we're really eager to just like all get in a plane and go to Vegas or Orlando or wherever it is that has cheap hotel rooms where we can, just be in a room. And would we be in that room working together all the time? No, but you do get some interaction. It's something Reed Hastings from Netflix got a lot of flack when he said he wants people back in the office. And he said, look, I'm not saying come in when you're sick. I'm not saying come in when you have like a childcare issue. I'm saying really good things happen from smart people being in a room together. I value that a lot. So companies that don't do that stay, hey, we're not going to have an office or half our team's not going to come in, I think you really have to make an effort. And as someone who was a remote member of a team for the past 6 years, I had to make a real effort to remain connected to the people I worked with, and look, I flew to Alexandria, Virginia once a month so I could spend a couple days in the office and really get that FaceTime and build those connections. It's a lot easier to have a difficult conversation with someone you've had a cup of coffee with, that you understand their situation, a little bit about them. So this isn't the end of the office. Some of that extra office space that's being given up, I think it might become, co-working space or dorms or living space or whatever it is. This is not the death of the city. This is just a small change toward reality of, look, you never should have been going to work when you might be sick. You never should have had to choose from, do I take my kid to their doctor's appointment or do I go to work? Like those are kind of inhuman choices, and good companies never made you do that. And I'll just finish with one thing. We've said this before. Do you really want the guy making your lunch to go into work when he doesn't feel well? So overall, there's going to be I think a societal shift on the idea of hey, if I'm not well, I understand the company still needs my work and some jobs can't be done from home, but is the overall danger to society worth me coming in? I think we now understand that it isn't.
Yeah. Well, Dan, I also think that it's probably, there's going to be tax abatements, tax forgiveness. There's different compensation structures if you live in different parts of the country. I think that's advantageous for organizations as well. Dan, we're going to leave it there. Really great talking with you as always. Thanks so much for doing double duty on the podcast and also on the network. Have a great rest of the week, and we'll talk to you again very soon.
I'll see you next week.
And that wraps up this episode of BRN AM. Have a topic of interest or someone you think we should talk to? then drop us a line. And don't forget, for all the news in retirement markets, technology, personal finance, check out today's edition of our newsletter, The Morning Pulse. So until tomorrow, I'm Jeff Snyder. Stay safe, keep on saving, and don't forget, roll with the changes.
Are you being audited and do you owe the IRS $10,000 or more in back taxes? Is the IRS threatening to take more of your money? Don't fight the IRS alone. The Tax Doctor is here to help you negotiate your tax bill and reduce your stress. The IRS can freeze your assets and seize your bank accounts, but you can stop these IRS actions. The Tax Doctor will work with you using our years of experience to represent your case to help you get the best resolution under the IRS guidelines. Help is here to deal with the IRS to reduce your stress. We've handled thousands of cases, so we know what we're doing. If you owe $10,000 or more in back taxes, do not call the IRS alone. Call a Tax Doctor now for a tax emergency analysis.
Call 800-224-6439.